Hi there. I'm super excited to be here with you today to share with you a few ideas about changing how your career is feeling in midlife. So picture this so that you wake up on a Monday morning and instead of that familiar knot in your stomach, you actually feel a quiet anticipation. Exactly. You're energized by the prospect of going into work and working on your projects and actually engaging in those meetings again. And when someone asks you, how's your work going? You actually have a genuine, uplifting response to share with them. You're proud of your work. And at the end of each day, you have a real sense of accomplishment. That's what I'm here to share with you today. If you like this topic, go ahead and like the video today. Feel free to subscribe, share, comment, all of those juicy things. So we're not talking about some kind of work utopia pipe dream thing here. What we're talking about is how you can create this reality. It can take some intentional work for sure, but it's not anything that you're not capable of. Trust me, I've walked this path and discovered that making work for you again is more than just a nice to have. It's fundamental to your well-being and your overall peace of mind, especially at this stage in life. And that's why I've developed, I'll call it a 4-step solution that's helping lots of men reclaim their professional lives. And if you stick around, you'll learn exactly how to implement each of these steps and create that real, lasting change that you want both in your work, but also in your personal life. Here's my story, from dream job to daily dread. Let me tell you about my 25-year journey in a career that slowly wore me down. It started as my dream job. I was so elated when I got that position. I was passionate, I was driven, I was full of ideas. I came in and sharing mode. I really wanted to shake things up in a good way. I wanted to contribute. But somewhere along the way, it morphed into something I dreaded facing each morning. And you may relate to that at this stage in your journey. Those Sunday scaries that became like a weekly ritual for me. And I found myself counting down every single workday until leaving at 5 p.m. Wasn't a fun place to be in. And over the years, I developed various coping mechanisms that I'm not so proud of. Initially, it was drinking. I found myself opening a bottle of wine every night just to kind of quiet some of that discontent and the frustration that was bottling up inside of me. And one bottle a night became the norm, not the exception. That negative work experience, it was really about the toxic culture that was there, and it wasn't so much the work itself, but it began to poison me and my environment and everything in my life, to be quite honest. It created a cascading effect of, well, negativity. And I was already a bit of a negative person to begin with. So this just exacerbated it all. And that touched into my relationships, my health, my overall sense of self-worth. And I caught myself, in retrospect, falling into a bit of a victim mode. And that kind of took grip on me. And I found myself constantly complaining about, management, the policies, my colleagues, you name it. Anything I could gripe about, work about, I would. Here's what happened to change everything in my life. It was a bit of a misstep, actually, to happen upon a yoga class when I was 29. And over the years, I kind of grew to love this thing. It really became a bit of a lifeline for me. And so when work got really, really toxic, it was yoga that really kind of saved me. At first, it was just kind of a physical practice that appealed to me, but the stretching, the movement, and all of that, after sitting at a desk all day, that felt really good. Gradually, it became something more of a mind thing for me in ways I hadn't expected, and in some ways I can't even really explain. The more I practiced, though, the less I craved some of those nightly drinks. It was quite amazing. And I was smoking at the time too, and I had less of a draw to the cigarettes. So that was great. My stress was clearly being depleted to some degree or relieved in some way, which was super appealing to me. I was getting healthier on a number of levels, and for the first time in years, I had something that I felt was purely mine. It was something that I could hold on to with a bit of passion and love, something that work couldn't touch and frankly contaminate. One aspect of the corporate job that I really, really loved was facilitating workshops and other training sessions where I saw people lighting up and really getting clarity about things. And there was something about helping people learn and grow that super energized me. It wasn't the stuff of the writing and the policy papers and the curriculum development so much, but the actual delivery, the facilitation. And during my yoga journey, I had this kind of aha light bulb moment where it's like, what if I combine this natural ability that I have around facilitation and teaching and all of that with my love for yoga? And so I enrolled in a 200-hour yoga teacher training program, and kind of the rest is history, as they say. That decision accelerated my personal growth in ways I could have never even anticipated. It gave me really practical tools to start dealing with what was the work situation. And more importantly, it connected me to a sense of purpose that I'd somehow lost in this scope of the work that I was doing in those corporate hallways, shall we say. The tools and the insights I'm sharing with you today actually come from this rich journey that I was on or I have experienced. Think of that as going from the depths of career dissatisfaction to finding meaning and purpose again in my life. What I'm going to share with you will serve you because it's been really proven and tested on a real life midlife struggle, which was my own. So let's look at the challenge of change. Before we dive into solution mode, there's something crucial you need to understand. We are creatures of habit, and we get powerfully stuck in certain ways of thinking and doing and being. And frankly, this is a real culprit behind our resistance for any significant change in our lives. And that applies to all of us. Think about it. How many times have you started something with the best of intentions, and maybe it was a new exercise routine, for example, or a commitment to leave work on time persistently, or a promise to yourself to update your resume so that you could start exploring around. And you might stick with it for a week, maybe two if you're lucky, but over time the efforts start to feel overwhelming because change does require sustained energy and attention. And more often than not, you shrink back into the familiar, those patterns that we know that keep us comfortable, even though they might be actually making us miserable. Kind of freaky how that works, but it's the truth. This is not a character flaw, by the way. It's actually neuroscience. Our brains are wired to conserve energy in this way that we stick to what's known to us, even when that knowing isn't serving us. Yeah, so we stick into the patterns that we're familiar with. That's why I'm going to make each of these 4 steps as compelling and hopefully as accessible or easy as possible for you. You deserve to have the best second half of your life. And being stuck in career dissatisfaction mode is robbing you of that potential. So let's dive into these 4 steps. Each of the following steps is important, and they don't need to necessarily be done in a particular order, but I'd suggest starting with whichever one most resonates with you and gradually incorporating the others as you see fit. So step number 1, or the first one we're going to cover, is accept or convert. I've been exposed to this notion in different versions over the years. I'm really loving the positive intelligence, a system that I'm trained in, how it addresses this really clearly. Essentially, what's going on is with any given situation, we have 2 fundamental choices that we can take. We can either accept the situation as it is and release the resistance we hold around it, or we can choose to convert or change the situation entirely. So those are our two primary choices. My experience has taught me that once my job started feeling burdensome, there was an escalating effect. It kind of like this snowballing began rolling around. Pretty much everything became ammunition as to why I didn't like my work. I could only see the negative aspects, the micromanaging, the bureaucracy, the politics, the toxicity. I completely lost sight of anything that was positive. There were positives. And here's the truth, there's always some good and some challenges in every aspect of every situation. And we get to choose which lens we view things through. So let's explore this accept path a little bit further. When you choose to accept, you make a fundamental commitment to being okay with the current tasks, the decisions that are made by leadership, and the role that you're playing or have been assigned. One of the most powerful ways to do this is simply to commit to doing what you need to do and doing it to the best of your abilities. So show up and perform. This is actually a core tenet or teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, that ancient text that comes from India and informs a lot of the traditions there, the beliefs there. It tells us that we all have duties in this lifetime. And when we show up for those duties and we execute them with excellence, we feel better about ourselves, even when we don't particularly enjoy the task at hand. So showing up and doing your best will actually make you feel better than being miserable in what you're doing. So this does require an attitude adjustment, and that can feel nearly impossible after perhaps years of negative thinking, which was my case. And that's why I incorporated breath work and mindfulness techniques that help us to get out of our heads and into our bodies. Yes, out of our heads and into our bodies. We have to interrupt all of this mental patterning that's keeping us stuck in these beliefs and these modes and these ways of being, so that we can create new and better and deeper neural pathways that actually serve us. So this pattern won't release easily because it's been entrenched. That groove is pretty deep, right? But you get to create new grooves. And that's how we begin to transform with consistent practice. Think of this as a daily cleansing process, like showering off negative energy so that you can see the value and the purpose in your work. And even when it's not your dream scenario, that's okay. I chose a long-term exit strategy based on the earliest date that I could be eligible for my pension. I committed to sticking it out, was able to show up each day because I saw that end point, that finish line in the future, drawing closer with each passing month. Plus, I had my yoga practice to keep me grounded and uplifted, which was, again, a godsend. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and look at the convert path. So this is a little bit of a different process. When we look at convert or change, it's meaning that you know in your bones that you can no longer stay in your current position. It's just gotten to that point, right? So, and the crucial thing we're looking at here is too often in midlife career disruptions, we find ourselves quitting and not having a solid strategy and creating maybe financial and emotional havoc in our lives. I don't want to look into that. I don't want us to go down that path. Instead, this is about making a conscious, strategic choice that includes creating a well thought out exit plan. This isn't about throwing havoc into the mix. This is where having an objective outsider, a coach like myself, can be invaluable in helping you navigate with clarity rather than emotion. Because let's be truthful, emotions are strong at this stage. When frustration and resentment cloud our vision, for example, we can make pretty hasty decisions and maybe we'll regret those later, and they may even create unnecessary suffering during the transition period. It's already hard enough. You don't need to exacerbate it. So with the convert approach, we need to break free from the negative thought loops because they won't serve us while we're making this plan for change and how we're going to move on. We just have to suspend that stuff, right? The transition requires what I call up-leveling. The tools and the approaches that got us this far aren't necessarily going to serve us in the next phase of our career or the next stage in our life. You need to identify not just a new job, but a new sense of purpose for the second act. And that's what will provide the guidance, the motivation, and the impulse to move forward strategically. So several factors come into play here. Think of financial considerations. How much runway do you need in terms of making a transition? Think of family dynamics. Does your spouse support this change? And how will it affect the family unit, the children, for example? Skill development. What new learning might be required in making a transition? And look at networking too. Has your professional network relationships, have they shifted, atrophied? Do you need to reactivate them? So the convert path also means taking inventory of transferable skills, identifying industries or roles that align with your values. And if you're not clear on your values, we do that work, your interests, and possibly exploring entrepreneurial opportunities that maybe weren't viable earlier in your career. Many successful businesses are started by folks in their 40s, 50s, or even beyond that, who bring decades of experience and a clear sense of what matters to those businesses. Let's move into the second step. Again, these don't need to be sequential. So this one is separate self from work. You can think of this step perhaps as an extension of the previous one, focusing on something many of us struggle with, and that's healthy boundaries. Boundaries might seem straightforward, we've all heard about them, but they're actually quite complex, especially for men who've been conditioned to be providers and achievers. We men tend to over-identify with our work, and it becomes not just what we do, but frankly, who we are. So if you think about it, when you meet someone new, you're introduced at a social gathering, for example, often the question is, so what do you do? And how do you typically respond? Well, I'm a manager, an engineer, I'm in sales. Notice the language there even, I am, rather than I work as. So we identify very deeply. The linguistics behind that reveal the deeper issue. We've blurred the line between our professional roles and our core identity. When work is going well and we feel our career is, respectable and fulfilling, saying I am feels fine. But what about when you're in a situation that maybe you're in right now, where your career, your work has become a source of stress, dissatisfaction, even shame? Identifying ourselves with that role will create a sense of what I'll call an identity ick factor. We don't want to say I am, because there's actually a lot that feels like that's not very good. So with boundaries, we want to have some soft boundaries. And so what are soft boundaries? Maybe think of them as the first step in making a conscious choice to stop defining yourself by your job title. So that's an example of a soft boundary. This means catching yourself when you're introducing yourself by your profession and instead sharing a different aspect of who you are. It might mean recognizing that your worth isn't determined by your position on an organizational chart or even the size of your paycheck. Yeah. Hard boundaries are the complement to soft boundaries. They need to be concrete, non-negotiable. To me, this means not taking work home with you. And that's not just the actual task, that's the emotional residue of the workplace culture. We want to leave that there. This is a challenge for several reasons. Over the past 3 decades, working outside of paid work hours has become normalized to the point of where if you don't do it, you're actually viewed as lacking commitment or even lazy. So the email, the Slack, these, group texts, all of this stuff, the smartphones have made us perpetually available. And many workplaces have come to expect immediate responses regardless of the time of day. But in midlife, it's crucial to be clear about boundaries, regardless of your level in the organization. So you might be a CEO listening to this, or maybe you're somewhere in the admin and support level. Regardless, you need to distinguish between personal and professional time. Let's be clear, too many families have been shortchanged by husbands and fathers who've brought work or work stress home with them every single night. When that work strain bleeds into the family time, it impacts all of you. It's not just you. So there are concrete ways to create this division, and it could be a physical ritual like changing your clothes when you get home, drop into something more casual. Or it could be a mental one, something like taking 5 minutes to do a conscious transition from work to family mode. I'm a yogi, so I might do some breath work. I might do something really relaxing like legs up the wall and just let your whole body let go. Perhaps it's turning off work notifications after a certain time. So no more chiming after 8 p.m., for example, or designating specific times when you'll check email outside of the work hours that are very restrictive and contained. They have boundaries. Even if you've had some boundaries in the past that have eroded over time, working with a coach can help you to reestablish some of that and get you into that mode of reclaiming your time, life without a negative impact to your professional performance. Because contrary to what some workplaces and work cultures might believe, having boundaries around this stuff actually makes you more productive and more effective, not less. When you create this healthy separation, you can focus on yourself not as I'm the marketing director or I'm the manager, but I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a weekend cyclist, I'm a volunteer guy, I'm a guy who's learning to play guitar. That makes you more human, more relatable, and guess what? More authentic. I also give you permission to fully engage in those other roles, to be present with your family instead of mentally reviewing your day's presentation at work while you're having dinner. Throw yourself into a hobby that you may have abandoned years ago. Invest in those friendships that maybe you've neglected while you were doing that hard work of climbing the corporate ladder. Lots of options there. Think about the creative energy that could flow into rebuilding relationships, exploring new interests, and committing to practices that enhance your well-being, not deplete it. When these become genuine priorities rather than afterthoughts or things that you're forcing yourself to do, you'll show up differently in all areas of your life, and this includes work. An unexpected benefit of all of this broader perspective often leads to clearer thinking and new opportunities presenting themselves. When you're not desperately clinging to your current role and as your source of identity and worth, you become open to greater possibilities that potentially you've been missing. Let's look at number 3, the energy shift. Now, here's something that might surprise you. We understand far more about ourselves as complete human beings now than we did probably when you started your career some 20 or 30 years ago. While mystics, which I count myself as one, and spiritual traditions have advocated for a holistic view of human potential for centuries, most of us in the West don't embrace that model. We've prioritized logic above all else. Viewing of life for most of us is very linear, very driven by the cause and effect model. We now know that reality is much more nuanced. We're beginning to understand that we are energetic beings, and the capabilities and potentials that extend to us are far beyond what we were taught or what many of us believe. I believe midlife is when we are given a great and unique opportunity to tap into this expanded understanding of ourselves. The dissatisfaction and restlessness you might be feeling is a sign that something's wrong within you. It's your higher self, your soul, if you will, trying to get your attention. It's a signal that there's more to this human experience than this narrow lane that you might have been driving for the last few decades. I like to break the retirement myth. If we wake up to this possibility, we've given what amounts to a new lease on life. We begin to understand how much we can truly expand ourselves and evolve in our second act. The cultural narrative that midlife is the beginning of the end is a limiting belief perpetuated by outdated social norms and models that dictated, we should retire around 65, collect a pension of some sort, and gradually fade away. That model, it was created when life expectancies were much shorter than they are now, and when physical labor was much more common. Today, many of us can expect to live well into our 80s and beyond, and in good health for the most part. The idea that our most productive and creative years are between 40 and 50, that's just simply wrong, and it's also destructive. Let's learn from the Mavericks. Many remarkable men have found their greatest success and fulfillment in the later years. Ray Kroc was 52 when he founded McDonald's, and look, he turned that into a global empire. Frank McCourt was 66 when he wrote Angela's Ashes, which won the Pulitzer Prize and launched his literary career. Nelson Mandela became South Africa's president at 75 after spending 27 years in prison. Charles Darwin didn't publish On the Origin of Species until he was 50. All that time ago. Winston Churchill won his Nobel Prize in Literature when he was 79. And these aren't anomalies. They're examples of what can be possible for us when we tap into a deeper potential and refuse to be limited by social expectations of aging. Working with your energy. To access this potential, we need to understand that we are energetic beings and learn to work with our energy bodies to enhance physical experience. This isn't a New Age mysticism thing. It's about recognizing that our thoughts, emotions, and physical state are all interconnected in ways that science is only now beginning to understand. When we learn to work with our energy intentionally, we can break old physical and mental patterns that have frankly kept us stuck and resulted in the situations we're in now. We become more dynamic, more open to exploration and to growth, even at midlife. We recognize that taking calculated risks and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is really the lifeblood of living fully. How do we begin this work? It starts with what I call a mental reset that incorporates better ways of moving our bodies, of using our breath, of calming our minds. Now, this might include breathwork practices that help regulate your nervous system and break you out of the stress response patterns that we're often stuck in. Movement that's not just about fitness, but about reconnecting with your body's wisdom and intelligence. Meditation or mindfulness practices that help you observe your thoughts rather than being controlled by them. Time in nature, oh my gosh, which research shows us very, very significantly how much that reduces cortisol levels and improves mental clarity. The goal here is to break free from sabotaging patterns that have been undermining your potential, probably for years, if not decades. And as you build towards living your authentic greatness and connecting with your true self, you'll find yourself expanding in ways you never imagined possible. It's quite amazing. This is the real gift of midlife, if you choose to unwrap it. It's time for the last step, more rewards and recognition. Many of us men struggle with forgetting to celebrate our achievements. We downplay our successes. We rush from one accomplishment to the next without pausing to acknowledge what we've done, or we dismiss celebration as unnecessary or even self-indulgent. Here's what research tells us. When we take time to acknowledge our victories, both big and small, we experience a greater sense of self-worth and accomplishment. More importantly, we give ourselves positive reinforcements that motivate continued growth and effort. That's what celebrating does. So with the high achievement trap, many of us have what's called a high achiever saboteur. It's a mental pattern that keeps us constantly pushing forward, always focusing on the next goal and the next promotion and the next project. While this drive can be valuable, it becomes destructive when it prevents us from ever pausing to integrate and celebrate what we're accomplishing. This pattern often leads us to seek validation and dopamine hits from less healthy means, whether that's excessive drinking, compulsive shopping, porn addiction, or other behaviors that provide temporary relief but don't address the underlying need for recognition and appreciation. Here's a hard truth. Your employer probably isn't going to adequately acknowledge your contributions, period. Even if you're in a senior position, you can't rely on others to recognize your efforts and achievements. You have to take charge of this yourself. This doesn't mean becoming a narcissistic, self-absorbed asshole. It means developing a healthy relationship with your own success and effort, rather than saving all of those celebrations for major milestones and big purchases. It's important to acknowledge the smaller wins along the way. This principle extends far beyond professional achievements. Recognize the effort that you put into your relationships, the difficult conversations you had with that teenage son, the extra attention you gave your spouse during a stressful time, the way you showed up for a friend in need. Celebrate that stuff. Acknowledge your own personal efforts, your personal growth. The day you chose to go for a walk instead of having another drink, the morning you got up a little bit earlier to exercise, the time you bit your tongue instead of snapping at a colleague. Celebrate those little wins, a little pat on the back, a little internal smile. Here are some concrete ways to build more recognition into your life. What about creating a daily gratitude practice? Preferably in writing, I would suggest. But don't just list what you're grateful for. Include with that the why behind the gratitude. Instead of, I am grateful for my family, write, I'm grateful for my family because they love me unconditionally and give me a reason to be the best version of myself, for example. Maybe establish a weekly reward system for yourself. Maybe this is like a Friday evening ritual where you celebrate your week's efforts. Maybe it's a solo run you go for on your favorite trail, or a quiet drive in the countryside. Or maybe it's a special dinner with your partner at a place you both love. What about keeping a wins journal where you record your daily achievements, no matter how small? This can help you train your brain to start to notice and value your efforts. And rather than constantly focusing on what you haven't accomplished yet, you get to focus on those wins. When you start to acknowledge your own efforts more consistently, something interesting begins to happen. You naturally begin doing more of this for yourself and for others. You become more generous with recognition for family members, colleagues, and your direct reports. This makes you not just a better leader, but also a better human being. Moving forward, your next steps. There are concrete steps you can take to make your current job situation better for you. And there are paths toward finding entirely new directions. We've discussed these. Some of you will choose to make significant changes and explore new career ventures, while others will make strategic adjustments and improve your current situation. Both are fine. However you decide to move forward, remember that what worked for you in the past is no longer sufficient to where you are heading now. The strategies that got you this far aren't necessarily the same ones that are going to take you into the next phase of your journey. This isn't a criticism of your past choices. It's simply recognition that growth requires new tools and new approaches. The investment in yourself. Don't try to navigate this transition alone. Seek input and guidance from people who've walked the path before you. Whether that's a coach, a mentor, a trusted advisor, a peer group of men facing similar challenges. Invest in support that can help you see possibilities that you might not be seeing on your own. And remember, you are worth this investment. The peace of mind, the sense of purpose, the professional satisfaction that you'll create will impact all areas of your life. Your relationships will improve. When you're not bringing home that stress of work every night, your health will benefit from you not relying on coping mechanisms like alcohol or other substances to cope with, frankly, career dissatisfaction. Your entire family will experience the positive effects of that husband, that father that feels fulfilled and energized rather than depleted and, frankly, resentful. When you do this work, when you reclaim your purpose and you align your professional life with your values, you become a model for other men who are struggling in these same challenges. That's important. You show your sons that it's possible to create a meaningful career rather than just enduring one. You demonstrate to your peers that midlife doesn't have to mean resignation and decline. This is bigger than just fixing your work situation. This is about refusing to accept that your best years are behind you and instead claiming the potential for the that midlife offers. It's about recognizing that you have decades of wisdom, experience, and capability that can be channeled into something so meaningful and so rewarding. The dissatisfaction you're feeling isn't a dead end. It's frankly a wake-up call. Your inner wisdom is telling you you're capable of more than you're currently experiencing. The question is, are you ready to listen and to take action? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and please share your experiences in the comments below. What resonates most with you about this topic? Which of these 4 steps feels most relevant to your current situation? And if you're ready to dive deep into this work and create a more concrete plan for your own career transformation, I invite you to book a Midlife Clarity Call. This is a focused conversation where we'll explore your specific situation and identify what's the most important next step for you to move forward from where you are now to where you want to be. And remember that you don't have to settle for career dissatisfaction. You should not. You don't have to accept that work is something you simply endure. Why do that? With the right approach and support, you can create a professional life that energizes rather than drains you, that aligns with your values rather than contradicting them, that contributes to your overall well-being rather than undermining it. Your second act can be your best act yet, but here's the thing, only if you're willing to do the work and to make it happen. The question is, are you ready to begin? It's my wish for you that you are, and I'm here to help you when you're ready. And again, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe. We'll see you very soon.